Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlights, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Joshua Barnes, live from the Firstpost studios. Let's begin with the top headlines. India is to reopen its embassy in Kabul after 4 years, as External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar hosts Taliban's foreign minister in New Delhi. The two sides hold talks with a focus on growth and countering cross-border terrorism. Britain and Ukraine begin negotiations for the joint production of interceptor drones. The defence project aims to combat the swarms of Iranian-origin Shahid drones launched by Russia on a daily basis in Ukraine. Japan's governing coalition collapses after a junior ally of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party exits the government. This weakens new LDP leader Sanae Takaichi even before she secures the role of Prime Minister. The International Criminal Court rejects former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte's release bid. The 80-year-old had asked for his release from the ICC custody on medical grounds. And Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado gets the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize for promoting democratic rights in the country. US President Donald Trump was snubbed for the award despite several high-profile nominations. We begin with the latest from West Asia. Israeli military has confirmed the implementation of a ceasefire in Gaza, agreed upon in Egypt earlier this week. Israeli defense forces say they have positioned themselves along the lines agreed under the Trump plan. The IDF added they will continue to remove any immediate threats emerging out of the enclave. The development came hours after the Israeli government approved a deal with Hamas, which will also see the release of hostages. Earlier, Israel confirmed that US President Donald Trump will head to Jerusalem this Sunday. This will be Trump's first trip to the region since announcing his 20-point peace plan that led to the Gaza peace deal. The visit is expected to coincide with the release of Israeli hostages by Hamas, a moment Trump has called the end of the war in Gaza. Trump confirmed he will also address the Israeli parliament during his visit this weekend.
Well, they've asked me to speak at the Knesset, and I've agreed to. If they would like me to, I will do it. It's the first time a president has ever done that, so that makes it very interesting, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I will do it if they want me to. They have asked me to do that. Thank you.
This Gaza peace deal, hammered out in Egypt after days of closed-door talks, was celebrated in Israeli streets and across Gaza, where families have lived under bombardment for more than 2 years. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his government had approved the framework for the release of all hostages, both living and dead. But the agreement came at a cost. Far-right Israeli ministers slammed it as an unbearable price, pointing to the thousands of Palestinian prisoners set to be freed in return. But Netanyahu has defended the deal, saying Israel is about to achieve its central war goal, the release of Israeli hostages.
Momentous development in the last 2 years. We fought during these 2 years to achieve our war aims, and a central one of these war aims is to return the hostages, all of the hostages, the living and the dead. And we're about to achieve that goal. We couldn't have achieved it without the extraordinary help of President Trump and his team, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner.
Amid the politics and celebrations, India weighed in too. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke with both Trump and Netanyahu, congratulating them on what he called a historic step towards peace. PM Modi praised the deal for opening doors to humanitarian aid and hostage releases, adding that terrorism in any form is unacceptable anywhere in the world. The agreement also sets the stage for a major humanitarian operation. The United Nations has unveiled a 60-day plan to rush food, water and medicine into Gaza, promising aid for 2 million people and temporary schools for 700,000 children. American officials say that a 200-strong US military team will be stationed in the region to oversee and observe the truce. Egyptian, Qatari, Turkish and Emirati officers will join them in a joint control centre, a coalition meant to build confidence on both sides. For many Israelis, this week brought tears of relief. In Tel Aviv, crowds waved US and Israeli flags and held photos of hostages still in captivity. And for many Palestinians, it brought respite. In Gaza, where, as per Hamas-run health ministry figures, the death toll due to the war has surpassed 67,000, residents spoke of tears of joy as they hoped the deal might finally end the Israeli bombing. Trump's Sunday visit to Jerusalem is being billed as a celebration of hope. But behind the diplomatic smiles linger deeper questions about reconstruction, about disarmament, and about whether this truce can hold. For more on this, we are joined by Alon Pinkas, a former diplomat, joining us live from Tel Aviv. Alon, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Joshua.
Let's first look at these questions that are there. Of course, disarmament of Hamas is massive, but I want to focus firstly within Israel. Where does this deal leave Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, the deal until now is limited just to that first phase. I mean, everyone uses the cliches and the hyperboles about peace and the breakthrough and thousands of years, Trump called it. Unfortunately, that's hollow platitudes. The deal right now, and that was politically what Mr. Netanyahu submitted to his cabinet, is just about what is called the first phase, the release of hostages, Israeli hostages, dead and alive, in exchange for Palestinian prisoners and an Israeli redeployment, not yet a full withdrawal, but a redeployment along agreed upon lines in the Gaza Strip. And that effectively and essentially has begun already today. So politically, Netanyahu is under no threat for getting just this first phase through. If he does try, as Trump had pressured him to proceed, to move forward with the other issues, and you mentioned some of them, Joshua, then he may have political problems. But to be honest, I don't think he wants to move forward. I think that this deal is going to be confined to that important in and of itself, critical to many people, emotional for everyone, but just to that hostage release.
Yes, and of course, Alon, there is a 72-hour deadline now that this peace deal, at least the first phase of it, has been ratified by Israel. That deadline for hostages to be released. What will that mean for the people of Israel who have suffered, those families of hostages who have been taken, both dead and alive, remaining in Gaza?
Well, for them, it's everything. It's the one thing they've been thinking about. It's the only thing they've been thinking about. They have been tormented emotionally. They have been, they have not slept in 2 years. They have dreamt of this day. I can only imagine. And again, how can I even pretend to put myself in their place? But as far as they're concerned, there was always the lingering worst case scenario going through their minds, because this deal, to be honest, without relitigating in our discussion, this deal could have been done a year ago. And in March, it was supposed to have been done, March of 2025, 7 months ago, but the ceasefire broke because Israel violated it. So there is anger and frustration with Mr. Netanyahu on the one hand, but that's all been put aside for a few days because, an entire nation is going to watch intently and sob as hostages come back. And at least the 20 who are alive. For those who are not, it's a question of closure and finality. But then come, in terms of the deal, come the real challenges, and I doubt Mr. Netanyahu will follow through on those.
And Alon, let's build on that. Of course, looking forward, disarmament, such a huge parts of this for Benjamin Netanyahu and for Israel. He said that it can happen the easy way or the hard way a short while ago. What do you think that entails? And do you think Israeli military objectives in Gaza have ceased and will stop now?
No, I don't. I think that unless Hamas disarms, then there are two ways of looking at what may happen next. One is that a series of miscalculations, a mistake, a shot that was fired, a mistake in the reply or in the firing back, and before you know it, everything escalates into a resumption of the war. That's on the ground. That's the miscalculation and inadvertent development that could happen on the ground. Then there is the bigger picture, and that is that Mr. Netanyahu, once the hostages have been released, would like to continue the war. And we may have this conversation, you and I, Joshua, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and you will ask, or I will ask you, how and why did the war begin again? Well, it's going to begin again because the next phase is like this disarmament. They were supposed to disarm, Hamas was supposed to disarm parallel to the release of the hostages. They are not. Let's assume most of them do agree to disarm. How do they do this practically? Well, it's not like there's a post office building where you go and you return your weapon or ammunition or explosives. Then there is the issue of the Arab force that's supposed to go in, and part of it, its job is to collect those weapons, but that Arab force will not go in unless Israeli withdrawal is full and complete, and that's not going to happen in the next few days. So we're looking at a very difficult period of time. Mr. Trump, President Trump, won all the accolades and praise and is basking in the glory of one phase. To get this really, to justify this being a peace process or an end of the war, there need to be the other stages implemented. And I honestly don't see them being implemented. And what's worse, Joshua, I do not necessarily see the president remain President Trump in the picture, as I can see. I do not see him remain engaged and committed as he was until now.
Alon Pinkas, of course, so many questions still to be answered, but optimism there. Thank you for your insights and for your time.
Thank you, Joshua. My pleasure.
Moving on now, and the United States has imposed new sanctions on Iran's oil network, targeting individuals and companies based largely in the United Arab Emirates, Hong Kong and China. Washington said these groups helped ship Iranian oil and sell liquefied petroleum gas in violation of existing restrictions. The move, officials said, was aimed at cutting off Iran's funding for its nuclear and missile programs and its support for armed groups across the Middle East. The US has imposed sanctions on nearly 100 individuals, entities and vessels linked to Iran's oil and petrochemical trade. Among them was an independent refinery and a crude oil terminal in China's Shandong province that, according to Washington, received millions of barrels in Iranian oil through sanctioned tankers since 2023. The sanctioned vessels carried large volumes of Iranian crude to Chinese ports in recent months. According to the US government, shipments were part of Iran's so-called shadow fleet, tankers that turn off tracking systems to avoid detection and bypass existing sanctions. The Treasury Department said this was the fourth round of sanctions targeting Chinese refineries that continue to purchase Iranian oil. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the action was meant to quote-unquote degrade Iran's cash flow by dismantling key elements of its energy export machine. These sanctions were being enforced under several executive orders signed by President Donald Trump, including one issued in February directing the US to drive Iran's oil exports down to zero. The US administration said the goal of this maximum pressure campaign was to prevent Tehran from developing nuclear weapons. Over the summer, US and Israeli forces carried out several strikes on Iranian nuclear and military sites. Since January, Washington has sanctioned 166 ships tied to Iran's oil trade. The latest move also targets a second Chinese oil terminal and a fourth independent refinery. The sanctions came as Israel and Hamas agreed to a ceasefire and hostage exchange deal. President Donald Trump told reporters at the White House that Iran had expressed support for that truce and that the US was open to further talks, but he warned that Tehran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Despite these sanctions, Iran's oil exports have continued to rise. A monitoring group, United Against a Nuclear Iran, said that September exports reached about 63 million barrels, worth more than $4 billion, the highest total this year. It added that Iran may be stockpiling sales ahead of the possible return of UN sanctions. China, meanwhile, condemned Washington's move. A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Washington said the US was abusing illegal unilateral sanctions and interfering in normal trade between China and Iran. Beijing warned it would take necessary measures to safeguard the rights of Chinese companies. The new sanctions mark another step in Washington's efforts to tighten pressure on Iran's oil trade network. That continues to thrive despite repeated crackdowns. Moving on, UPI, or the Unified Payments Interface, may soon be getting another interface. Enter OpenAI's ChatGPT. Sam Altman's company has partnered with India's retail payment authorizer to enable UPI payments within ChatGPT. The move could allow users to make purchases directly through ChatGPT without switching apps. The feature is currently in a pilot stage, and once rolled out, users will be able to discover products, compare options, and complete payments all in one conversation with the chatbot. For instance, if a user gives a prompt to order ingredients for a Thai curry for 4 people, ChatGPT will storm its AI-driven action. The chatbot will check listings with a quick commerce platform, show options, and place the order once the user confirms. The system uses Indian retail payment authorizer's new tool, UPI Reserve Pay and UPI Circle. These tools allow users to pre-authorize limited payments, giving the AI-controlled access to complete small transactions. It's part of what OpenAI calls agentic payments, where the AI executives provide actions without manual intervention each time. The user still has oversights, including real-time tracking and the ability to remove payment access instantly. AI-enabled payments are emerging as the next step in digital commerce. The development follows similar experiments by Google and Perplexity AI, which have begun testing in-app payment systems powered by artificial intelligence. For OpenAI, this is part of a broader effort to expand ChatGPT's capabilities beyond information and search. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has hailed India as one of the world's most dynamic digital economies. India has also emerged as the largest user base for ChatGPT, overtaking the United States in monthly active users recently. For India, the pilot highlights how UPI's open architecture continues to attract global technology firms. By linking UPI with conversational AI, the NPCI is positioning India's payment system as a testing ground for AI-driven transactions. The companies involved say the goal is to explore personalized and secure payment experiences through AI, but they have not yet shared timelines for a wider rollout. It's also not yet clear if this feature, once public, will be available to all ChatGPT users or restricted to those who have paid subscriptions. OpenAI says all payments will continue to be routed through existing UPI security layers. India's retail payment authorizer, MPCI, has also introduced biometric authentication for UPI, allowing users to verify payments using fingerprints or facial recognition instead of PINs. Analysts say both moves reflect an industry-wide shift towards simplifying digital payments amid concerns on security of such payments. For now, the future remains in limited testing. But if successful, it could mark a new phase where everyday transactions move directly into the chat window, merging AI assistance with India's digital payments backbone. Our next story is from the Philippines. A powerful 7.4 magnitude earthquake struck off the southern Philippines on Friday morning, sending waves of panic across the region. According to the United States Geological Survey, the quake hits approximately 20 kilometers from Manay in Davao Oriental. At least 6 people have died. Local residents in southern Philippines described terrifying shaking. One stated that it was very slow at first, but then it got stronger.
It started shaking. I thought it was going to be like a typical weak earthquake, and then suddenly it got stronger to the point where like the ceiling started to crumble a bit. So we had to like just hid in our chairs. Everyone was like screaming, and then it went to the point where the whole panels, like in the Augie, it broke down, like literally fell down. I even I think I inhaled some of the dust there from the panels.
Images from Davao City near the epicenter showed chaotic scenes outside hospitals as people sought safety. There have also been reports of ceiling collapses in multiple offices in the Davao City. At a school in a small town near Manay, teachers said several students suffered panic attacks and difficulty in breathing as the tremors hit. Power and communications were disrupted in Davao Oriental, making damage assessments difficult.
Very big impact. Okay, this is like the strongest earthquake I've ever experienced in like my whole life. Dude, the last I experienced was like 6 years ago ata yung sa SM. This year was like the strongest earthquake ever.
The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology said a destructive tsunami along the east coast was there. They urged residents to evacuate to higher ground or move further inland. The quake also triggered tsunami warnings in the neighbouring Indonesia and Palau. The president of the Philippines called for evacuations in several coastal provinces. However, Indonesian authorities have not reported any immediate damage so far. In northern Sulawesi, coastal communities prepared for possible waves of up to 1 metre. Fishermen carried their catch inland to save it. The quake struck the Philippines just 11 days after a 6.9 magnitude tremor that killed 74 people and damaged more than 72,000 homes in Cebu.
Bahay namin, ang kusina namin nasira. Tapos yung bubong parang hindi mo na kailangang pagkatiwalaan.
Earthquakes are a near daily threat in the Philippines, which lies on the Pacific Ring of Fire. This is a belt of intense seismic activity stretching across the region. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center later lifted the alert, stating there was no longer a tsunami threat. However, the fear and disruption caused by this earthquake still lingers, reminding communities of the fragility of life in this seismically active region. That is all we have on the show today. We'll see you again next week at the same time. Until then, thank you for watching.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.